All right, let's move on to the nothing stops this train segment of the show.
Oh yeah.
So Moody's downgraded US debt from AAA to AA1, and Besant commented on this. And our friends Lynn Alden and Luke Groman, who we cite often on this show, have been obviously pounding this drum for quite some time. Nothing stops this train is the meme that Lynn's been using. It comes from Walt. So what's the name of the show? Breaking Bad. It comes from Breaking Bad. Yeah. And basically, the idea behind the meme is no one, not even Elon Musk, all right, guys, not even the almighty powerful Elon Musk, can stop the train, the debt train that is the US deficit and debt. So Besant spoke about this week.
I think that Moody's is a lagging indicator. I think that's what everyone thinks of credit agencies. Larry Summers and I don't agree on everything, but he said that when they downgraded the U.S. in 2011. So it's a lagging indicator. And just like Sean Duffy said with our air traffic control system, we didn't get here in the past 100 days. It's the Biden administration and the spending that we have seen over the past 4 years. We inherited 6.7% deficit to GDP, the highest when we weren't in a recession, not in a war, and we are determined to bring the spending down and grow the economy.
This is a very political answer, and it's the one that you give every time. You don't see a big change in the economy or in financial policy in the beginning of a new administration. Things aren't going as well. It's the previous administration's fault, which, is probably true because economic policy doesn't really change the economy itself that fast, but it's a very convenient political answer, not our fault.
Totally. And I'm sympathetic to that. I'm sympathetic to oh yeah, it's not our fault. It's the last guy, but it's not so often. Those were record deficits and you don't get there overnight. It's been a 30-year problem. And there was some shakeup, I think, in all the policy, tariffs, trade war. Did that add fuel to the fire? Absolutely it did. But it is the situation, and it's why all the Bitcoiners, it's why Lynn Alden was talking about nothing stops this train. She didn't start talking about that recently. She's been talking about that for 2 years.
Yep.
And it's because we were running record fiscal deficits, and it's there was very little shock absorption left in the system. And so then current admin comes in and they try to pull some stuff off, and maybe that was wise, maybe that was unwise, maybe it's not even a commentary on the policy, but what was discovered is that there is very little shock absorption left. There is very little room for any sort of tightening. And this is great because, not great, but this tailors into a point I wanted to make. There's been a sea change in how they're speaking and what they're talking about. And what we're seeing now is instead of cut spending, we're seeing run it hot. And Besant's now on TV talking about GDP growth, not spending reductions or deficit reductions. And so I think the administration did learn the correct lesson from what has happened, in my opinion, in that you can't cut your way out of this. Your only hope is to grow your way out of it or mitigate it via growth. And that's correct. And I think that's the same. And Luke would agree with that. I think Lynn would agree with that. And I do think the administration has now warmed up to that view.
Agreed. Brady, do we have that chart that shows, I think it's since 1980, what the deficit? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Besant's answer is technically correct. It was a little political. He just points to the last administration. That obviously begs the question, what about the administration before that? What about the one before that? And you can see this trend. You could argue it's been a trend since 1980, but look at when it really started accelerating. It's really the financial crisis is when this really started accelerating. And we've obviously had presidents from each political party since then. But I would say the financial crisis was when this trend started. COVID, you could then argue, put it into hyperdrive. But yeah, this is not really a political party story. This is more like a system level thing. It's theoretically possible to cut spending, but when you look at what we spend the most on, it's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, defense, and interest on the debt. And you can put interest on the debt aside because you can't just unilaterally decide you're going to cut that. That's more of a market-based thing. But all the other ones, in theory, you could decide to cut it. But if you cut any of those, you're going to piss some people off. And there's a reason why the kind of Paul Ryan era of the Republican Party is not in power, that they're not super popular anymore, because even if you could argue the logic behind it, it's just not a very socially and politically palatable message. So the spending is going to continue one way or another. And I'll just share one more thing that I thought is interesting. We mentioned this on the show back in February. Don't expect you to all remember, but Pomp, I'm going to end up giving him credit here. I'm going to dig him a little bit, but then I'm going to give him credit. Back in February, he had an event in New York that I did attend in person. And he went on the stage. And remember, this was like less than a month after Trump gets inaugurated. People are like, Doge this, Doge that, Elon's going to cut. Pomp went on the stage and he was probably trying to say something a little hyperbolic, but he goes, they're going to balance the budget. They're going to do it. And just, I think it was yesterday or the day before, he tweets and he goes, I was basically wrong about this. I thought they would balance the budget. I thought Doge would do more. Now it's clear this is just not going to happen. So even some of the people who were the biggest proponents of that strategy in the last 2 weeks, they've realized that this is just not a political reality anymore.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were very excited about what the potential for Doge. I think there's a lot of people who are looking at it like, wow, this is the first time we are going to reverse essentially the rot that has occurred in the government because of fiat for the first time in our lives. We have a real shot at seeing this happen. And you just look at Elon right now and you can tell I tried. They're not going to pass any legislation that's going to make any of this permanent. And the way Lynn says, nothing stops this train. They're just going to keep printing and printing. So what does that mean? Buy more Bitcoin.
Yep. That's the sound of inevitability. It's the printer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. We do have a couple other charts to take a look at. John, maybe this one for a second here. This is the visualization of the big beautiful bill. Is that right?
Yeah. So
yeah,
I think it was by design, the BBB, probably a little bit of a dig, because BBB before this was the Build Back Better bill. Trump says, oh, I want my own BBB.
I didn't even realize that. That's hilarious.
I don't even know if anyone said that, but I just remember seeing it referred to as BBB. And I was like, oh, that meant something different 2-3 years ago.
Build Back Better. Yeah.
Yeah. And if anyone's like a total hawk on this stuff, this is from a few days ago. Wall Street Journal published this. It might not be the latest thing that got passed. The actual bill just passed the House very narrowly to a vote of 215 to 214.
Whoa.
So as close as it could be. Next step means the bill heads to the Senate, and the kind of expectations there are there'll be more tweaks. They rarely just look at something and say, yeah, this is good. So that's where it's at. This graphic here is still representative of what we're talking about here. And it's basically, this looks at the changes of what the path was previously. And as you can see on the right side, this is adding another 2.5 trillion to the deficit, to the debt and the deficit over the next 10 years through 2034. This, as we said, this is the nothing stops this train segment. This is just another visualization of that.
That's right. Okay. So the point being, can't do anything. Doesn't matter who the president is. Doesn't matter what party's in power. You just can't do anything at this point. And all you can do is buy Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin, avoid the fiat debasement that is inevitable. And it's just a matter of how long it'll last at this point. Okay, so let's take a look. Which is this one? I'm going to pull it up because I can't even see it. Oh, this is the largest outlays for spending by various, it looks like agencies, right? HHS is by far the highest. Social Security is next. No surprise there. Then the Treasury, which I assume is deficit facilitation, or sorry, interest payments. I'm not sure. I'm guessing that's what it is.
Correct.
And then defense. Yeah.
And this is apples to apples. So it's looking at October to March of the government's fiscal year 2024 versus October to March 2025. And the green bars represent 2025. As you can see, if you're looking at the chart, the green bars are all higher. So we're just spending more in each category across the board. And again, this is not in response to some sort of recession. And this is coming from the administration that in theory wanted to cut spending and balance the budget. So yeah, to Stephen's point, there's a big change of tone here Alex made the point as well. People were thinking this is the chance for this administration to cut spending, even move the needle towards balancing, even if you didn't believe there would be a full balancing. And it's going the other direction. It's pretty hard to deny it at this point.
Okay, let's take a look at some price stuff. My favorite chart, which we look at every week at this point, is the Bitcoin and global M2 chart. I love this because it's just it's a way to fundamentally predict Bitcoin price, right? There's this correlation between M2, which is the global money supply, and Bitcoin, people buying Bitcoin, which makes sense, not just people, corporations, nation states, etc., which just makes sense that there's a correlation there. It makes intuitive sense, right? The more money that's out there, the more fiat that can go into Bitcoin. And M2 has typically led Bitcoin's price, and we see M2 continuing to rise as we have the past couple of months. And we were probably right. Let's see, March 2025. Yeah. So when we started looking at this, it was probably January, February. Bitcoin was down here before the rise started. It was in this dip toward the end of this dip here. And it's now started to follow M2 up. And it looks like, based on this correlation, if you believe it to be true, which it looks like it is on this chart, Bitcoin price is just going to keep following because M2 is still going up and up right now.
Yeah, it's been an interesting chart, and it's been an interesting kind of scenario to watch. And I just think looking at the fiscal and all the messaging that has changed just suggests we're going to run it hot. We're going to print. We're going to grow. We're going to spend. These things are happening. We're not entering into austerity. And this even got Elon just tweeted, "I have come to the perhaps obvious conclusion that accelerating GDP growth is essential. Doge has and will do great work to postpone the day of bankruptcy of America. But the profligacy of government means that only radical improvements in productivity can save our country." This is basically him throwing in the towel.
It's a capitulation. Yeah.
Capitulation. It's a capitulation. He's saying we can't cut our way out of this, which is true. It's of course true. You can even respect the effort, but it's just not something that's possible because of what we talked about there before. Most of it is Social Security. Most of it is healthcare. Most of it is these things that you're just not going to touch. It's not going to happen. They're politically infeasible. So we really are seeing the capitulation of the austerity approach.
Hey, good try, Elon. Nice try. Nice try. Go back to the rockets. It's a little easier than trying to solve this problem. All right, we've got...
Oh my gosh, that's a hilarious statement, actually.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah, colonizing
for you,
Mars
rocket science is easier.
Colonizing Mars is easier than trying to stop the train.
And stopping the train.
Wow.
Check out BTC in DC in the fall at btcindc.com. That's going to be held at the Kennedy Center, the historic Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., right next to the Watergate, the historic, infamous Watergate Hotel. It's going to be a really, really cool vibe there. Something that we haven't seen before in the Bitcoin, conference circuit. And it's a great time, a really important time to try to have an impact and be part of the discussion around Bitcoin and public policy. So we hope to see you there. Little shout out again to Mara for supporting the show and securing the Bitcoin network.